I brewed this coffee especially for you, so there's no need to be anxious, my darling." His speech was kind, but the look in his eyes gave me the willies. That's what my husband Daniel said. Behind the rich roast, there was a metallic, almost artificial aroma in the cup he gave me, while it felt warm and comforting. From across the marble island, my sister-in-law beamed as we sat in Rebecca's spotless kitchen. She let her coffee alone, while I was virtually pushed into having mine. This place and this same moment had been here before, offered something special, and there were too many people looking for me to turn it down. At last I felt prepared. My gaze darted across the room as I gingerly raised the cup. It seemed like Daniel was standing too near to Rebecca. Something else than kindness shone in her eyes. Just enough to moisten my lips, I feigned taking a sip. The sour taste lingered on my tongue, reinforcing my worst fears. Critique had been leveled. Just a few seconds after that, I tripped and spilled enough coffee to exchange cups. Oh, clumsy me, while no one was looking. After waiting for 5 minutes, Rebecca finally sipped some of her own coffee. Then she blinked. I stopped. She felt a shaking in her hand. Her grin began to wane at that moment. She muttered to Daniel, her eyes wide with fear. "Something is wrong." When I realized it, I knew it wasn't paranoia. I felt it. It was enough for me to play the victim. Emily Carter is my name. My friends, coworkers, and neighbors in Charlotte, North Carolina would have told you I was laser-focused a year ago. I'm 31 years old, very driven, possibly a tad too trusting. I manage clients worth millions of dollars and establish business identities as a strategic branding consultant. I arrived here via deliberate action. I kept my head down put in a lot of time, and the outcomes spoke for themselves. Once upon a time, my safe haven was my husband, Daniel Carter. Being a former software engineer who now managed projects, he had this cool, collected air about him that made everything seem okay, even though it wasn't. As for my sister-in-law, Rebecca Hart, she was quite the polar opposite. Cunning outfits even cunninger tongues. She oversaw the aggressive Southeast marketing business, Hart and Finch Marketing. She was very wonderful as the kind older sister, overly beautifully. Something deeper resided within her, hidden under the staged brunches and too polished comments. I chose to disregard it at first, attributing it to my inherent unease, perhaps resentment as well. The clients that her business was seeking had been found me, achieving more proposal success than her, handling pitch rooms better than she does. I refrained from bragging or taking a stand, though. To be honest, I didn't see any need to. Subtle details followed. The red wine was accidentally spilled on my ivory dress by Rebecca during our engagement celebration. It was too late. She screamed, apologized, and promised to foot the bill for cleaning. I was really sick after Christmas dinner, the first year I spent it with my family. Oysters were Daniel's finger. I felt a little off too, Rebecca added, even though she appeared perfectly well. Little enough to be excused, yet common enough to be noticed. The episodes built up over time. An unusual rash following tea at her place. After her birthday brunch, she got a throbbing headache. A single visit to the emergency room escalated into 3 and then 5. A journaling practice began in my life. Every visit, symptom, and food was meticulously documented. Even so, I doubted my own judgment. Was my thoughts excessive? Perhaps my body was simply very sensitive. Perhaps I was succumbing to the stress. However, a new detail soon caught my eye. Rebecca's house became a regular hangout for my husband, Daniel, as I stayed up late to fix her network issues and helped her with family projects. I overheard them exchanging looks when they thought I wasn't watching. The texts were erased before I had a chance to view them, and the way he began to brew coffee, with care, played along, always the one to offer me the initial drink. I could no longer see love in his eyes. There was remorse. Once I stopped dismissing my misgivings, they grew louder. As soon as I started watching, I couldn't stop. I pretended to sleep late one night. With utmost stealth, Daniel slipped out of bed and into the study. Silently, I trailed behind him, just far enough to make out his rushed, low voice on the phone. Only bits and pieces were caught. "It's all right with her. We must exercise caution. I will take care of it tomorrow. She will not make the pitch." Blood froze in my veins. I couldn't tell if he was referring to me specifically or a commercial transaction. Still, I felt a particular twist in my gut. It was clear to me that I needed to put my guard up. The next day, I replaced our kitchen's sugar container with one that I had personally tested. Daniel was oblivious. That night, I grinned and accepted his offer that he make me tea. I kept a close eye on him. Using a little container that I had never seen before, he took it out of the cupboard. Detox powder is written in very small letters on the label. As soon as he averted his eyes from me, I snatched the cup and flushed its contents. I was perfectly healthy that night. All of a sudden, the dots began to join, with all symptoms that have no apparent cause. Each chance squandered, whenever an accident appeared to be to the advantage of another person. Back in the spring of last year, I gave a pivotal presentation after being selected to spearhead the bid for the Linford Hotel's account, changing the game. Unfortunately, I was too sick with headaches and stomach pains to attend. Rebecca's company won the contract after a fierce competition. Is it a coincidence? Perhaps once. Except this time I won't. I went over all of my health documents. I went to the hospital 3 times in 6 months, with vague symptoms including nausea, vertigo, and tingling, inconsistent throughout. It is never made obvious. Whenever they consumed anything they had cooked, Rebecca was good at making excuses. Your system must be so sensitive, you unfortunate soul. Perhaps it's gluten. My darling, you really should get more rest. But when she imagined I wasn't looking, her expression changed. She looked at me with calculating eyes, some chilly object. But Daniel, he inquired about my forthcoming talks, constantly telling me to take a break. Let your team present for once, and maybe skip this client dinner you've been working too hard, among other things. His expression seemed concerned to me at first. I now see that he was deliberately setting me up for disappointment by suggesting that I pass up chances to prove myself worthy of Rebecca's admiration. As he was in the shower, I combed through his phone. What I discovered completely destroyed any remaining faith I had. Comments left by Rebecca. A Henderson pitch is beyond her abilities. That day, make sure she's not around. The herbal extract I left behind is stronger than before. Give it a shot. A thumbs up had been Daniel's response. Without reserve, I am not guilty. Sitting there, I trembled from the overwhelming waves of rage, betrayal, and horrifying clarity. They weren't only out to undermine me. Some people were out to destroy me, perhaps even more. At that point, I began documenting every detail. Notes recorded in audio format, images captured by the screen, journals, data backups to my personal cloud on demand. A second phone encrypted and offline was installed hidden. It was imperative that I be prepared, even though I had no idea how far this would go. Simply put, I had the impression that they weren't finished. Actually, things were only beginning for them. After that night, I seldom slept at all. It seemed as if every sound in the home had intensified with the slightest floorboard squeak, serving as a warning. I, however, maintained my composure. No distractions. The next weekend, Rebecca flawlessly invited people to our monthly family brunch. Her typical affair, replete with 3 courses, monogrammed napkins, and everything. She would attempt it again, I was sure of it. Now, though, I would too. I have a covert microphone attached to my backup phone that I wore under my dress that morning. A second gadget discreetly filming everything was stowed away in my purse. Everything appeared to be in its proper place when we reached Rebecca's house. Overly ideal. Aromas of citrus and vanilla filled the kitchen. Daniel was extremely cordial. We had a passionate kiss, extracted my seat, mooched me as an angel. I returned the smile and did my part. Sitting down, Rebecca presented me with a mug of coffee. "Daniel made this by himself," she winked. "He's been experimenting with different combinations specifically for you." Just a moment of hesitation passed. "How lovely," I said as I raised the cup. The aroma enveloped me in an instant. Strong Joe and another beverage, sharp, chemical. Daniel kept a close eye on me, overly cautiously. None of Rebecca's were drank. With an air of anticipation, she merely stirred it. Placing my cup aside, I glanced at my phone. Oh no, an important email. Would it be okay if I dropped by your workplace for a minute? Rebecca, with a nod, she agreed. Certainly it's conveniently located nearby. Faking a misstep, I walked by her, defeated the table's peripheral. "I am sorry," and we exchanged the cups, subtle, no kinks. I didn't even get halfway through locking her home office door. To get a glimpse of the table, I broke it open slightly. While I waited, Rebecca took her cup off the table, drank a little. First, there was silence. It happened then, her hand shook. She clenched her fists. She lowered the cup and clenched her jaw. "Daniel," she whispered, "there's a problem." Daniel became quite pale, leaped so quickly that he toppled his seat. He made his statement. "That wasn't your cup. Too rapid and too loud." "Gasp," whispered Rebecca. What were the ingredients? I went to the threshold, at peace. Calls are being recorded on the smartphone. I'm also curious about that. They were hiding behind masks of terror, shame, and bewilderment. Slumped in her chair was Rebecca, perspiration appearing on her forehead. She has pale lips. Dial a number," she stutter-spoken. Before this, I was already there. "Yes, an ambulance is required at 146 Maplewood Drive. Dial 911. It has caused a significant response in my sister-in-law. Her condition is worsening, yet she is cognizant." Down at her side, Daniel knelt. "We didn't anticipate this happening." Rebecca sounded quite nervous. "You mentioned that its sole purpose was to afflict her, not me." With a steady, icy tone, I spoke. "Are you referring to the last 5 instances?" With her big, wild eyes, she stared at me. "Did you know?" "I knew," I remarked. "The speaker claims to have known all the details. They saw the phone I was holding. It is easy to hear the music, what they discussed, her admission." I retreated while keeping my phone erect as Daniel sprang for me. "Give it a go, Daniel. Let's include assault in the list as well." He came to a halt, shaking. Far away, sirens sounded their wailing. With her consciousness hazy, Rebecca was slipping out of her chair. Daniel stood there motionless, his jaw clenched. "She came up with the idea," he muttered. "She despised your success. She despised the fact that you outran her." With difficulty forming words, Rebecca coughed. "You said that 1 additional dose would be sufficient to exclude her from the Henderson meeting." The record of Henderson. A branding contract worth millions of dollars. one that I was going to propose on Tuesday. It was like a light bulb went off. It was all a calculated effort to ruin my best chances. I was no longer envious. This was a battle. Until the paramedics came, I did not say a word. The coffee cup was passed to them as they carried Rebecca into the ambulance. It's something you should check out. Inside, you'll find more than simply espresso. Daniel attempted to trail behind, but I blocked his path. I'll be accompanying her on the ride, I announced. I still want to make sure she receives the proper care after all. Astonished, he gave a nod, losing the match. I crouched down so that he could be the only one to hear. You have to decide which side of this story to tell the cops, because I've already picked mine. Charlotte General's emergency room was a complete shambles. Echoing voices, clattering gurneys, and bright lights. Despite everything going on around me, I felt at peace, managed effectively. The audio was still stored in triplicate, and I waited in the waiting room with my phone still in my hand, as the medical staff surrounded Rebecca, who was now pale and trembling on the hospital bed. I observed from behind the glass doors. Daniel followed closely following. It was his intention to park the automobile, he said. However, he never returned inside. The patient's sister-in-law, a nurse, said as she walked up to me. Nodding, I consented. As of right moment, she is stable. However, her blood work shows a few unusualities. You are being asked to talk with the doctor. Along a lengthy corridor, I trailed behind her, dodging curtained bays and rolling monitors. Waiting for him was Dr. Sullivan. The woman is tall, in her early 50s, and she has strong, unyielding eyes. "Excuse me," she spoke about Carter. "The toxicity has been examined. Concerningly, we do not typically find amounts of synthetic substances in Rebecca's blood, which is a major cause for concern. You can't call these medicines. They're inhibitors made for scientific use, specifically for the purpose of reducing brain activity in lab settings." "No, I didn't. This isn't something you'd put in your coffee by mistake, is it?" Her expression remained one of utter disapproval. "No, that is unless malicious intent is involved." I passed my phone to her. "Listen to this, please." Yes, she did. Every single syllable. From clinical detachment to wrath, her expression shifted dramatically. According to her, this is attempted poisoning. She made her notes on her tablet. "We will be notifying the proper authorities about this right away." I peered through the observation glass as she pivoted. Daniel was back. All of it had been relayed to him. Standing outside the hallway, he appeared as pale as a ghost, his hold on the doorframe suggesting that he needed it for stability. "Emily, wait," he began, then advanced. "It appears this way to me, but you have no idea. Rebecca transformed everything." "Delivery to room 212 security," Dr. Sullivan yelled out to her from behind. In an effort to seem composed, he lifted his hands. "Sorry I inflicted any pain on you. Rest, that's all I wanted. I am done. Your exertion was excessive." "By giving me a buzz," his voice wavered. "You incessantly outshone her. Every single client chose you. All accounts. It was too much for her. I was also under the impression that if you were to skip a few of meetings so she could step in for me." His nod was sluggish and embarrassed. "You were particularly asked by the Henderson customer. If only we could exclude you from the meeting," she replied. I retrieved an additional file, written words, sent from his phone a week ago. "Tuesday is the day," Rebecca stated. "Confirm that she has left." "I have the stronger stuff," Daniel said. "She is absolutely not going to get out of bed." As I asked whether there was more of this Dr. Sullivan glanced at me. I gave her the backup disc that I had made. "We've got everything covered. What I discovered in Daniel's workplace included audio texts and even packaging. I can see it everything. As soon as they saw Daniel, 2 security officers surrounded him and led him to a holding cell. He was submissive. Hollowed out, he stared at me. He murmured, "I didn't intend to." "We had no intention of harming you." Direct and icy Dr. Sullivan jumped in. She was in danger of dying, given the amount of caffeine in the coffee. Had she sipped the entire cup, the rest of the statement might be left unfinished. In my direction was the nurse. "I implore you to inform the authorities. Detective Harper is an expert in cases involving corporate fraud and domestic violence. Request to talk with her." Before I collaborated with her. The arrival of Detective Harper was like a raging storm crashing into a peaceful chamber. No makeup, black jacket, and straight to work. Across from me, she took a seat and she said, "Tell me everything." Yes, I did. I presented the logs to her, the schedules, signs, and symptoms. These once fortunate occurrences become everything but. I handed her the spare phone, which had secret recordings dating back days. The voice of Rebecca could be clearly heard in one video, just enough to ensure she doesn't play a role. Just make sure she misses the pitch. Dying isn't necessary. Daniel, once again, survived time. The mixture I produced didn't survive long enough. Additional amounts will be utilized by me. Harper's jaw clenched with each letter as her pen scribbled across her notebook. "Are you aware of how near you were to suffering irreparable harm?" she inquired. "I really do now," I said. It was hard for me to believe. Attention was directed towards the cops standing close as she shifted her attention. Protect their gadgets. Every single drawer, computer, and piece of paperwork at their home and workplace must be searched. Harper came back with news by dusk. We discovered a desk drawer in Daniel's that was locked. Within were vials with clinical-grade substances that had Rebecca's initials and dose information. He was carefully watching how you responded as if you were a test subject. I restrained myself from screaming. Sedentary I remained. Allow it to envelop me. It wasn't a joke. My tone was unassuming. Yeah, I was totally correct. No longer the cold CEO. Rebecca remained comatose in her hospital bed, a frail lady hooked up to equipment. On one occasion, as I went by, she opened her eyes. She remained silent, though. That wasn't necessary. Everything had gone wrong with the setup. Next up, all of it needed to be brought into the light now. Someone unexpected contacted me 2 days after Rebecca was hospitalized. Dr. Dry, Ava Michaels, a former college roommate, who is now a toxicologist for pharmaceuticals. Years had passed since we last had any kind of conversation, but she had seen that my name was on a police demand for compound verification. That evening, she gave me a call. "List of compounds, Emily. How risky was this? Do you even have a clue? I'm beginning to." She hesitated. "The samples that your spouse was able to obtain are not now available for purchase. Such are limited. Someone on the inside is feeding Rebecca, or Rebecca has a direct conduit." I forwarded the images of the vials that were retrieved from Daniel's drawer to her. After only 1 hour, Ava returned the call. "You know that label, 'Your lab is my lab'? Those were sent to someone I know. One man, Rebecca's ex-boyfriend, Brad Kessler. They dated for a long time before he was recruited in the same lab. She obviously watched him closely. Perhaps they influenced him to provide them access. Yes, it was more than simply Daniel. She was assisted, as seen from within. Everything has been forwarded to Detective Harper. She acted swiftly. Secret handoffs, cache traces, and lab access logs were discovered during the inquiry into Brad. He was taken into custody on Friday. The net should have felt tighter, and it actually did. However, I persisted in feeling unsafe. Why? Because we still didn't know what drove her fixation. Someone I'd almost forgotten provided that response too. One Lauren Grady she was. Prior to my current position, we were colleagues at a boutique agency. She contacted me via email after perusing the news article on the event at the hospital. She spoke in a plain English. "This has happened before. Have you heard of me?" We rendezvoused in a downtown cafe the next morning. Lauren seemed exhausted. Her face more slender than I recalled, and her eyes heavier than usual, yet her tone remained constant. "A large deal came my way 3 years ago. It was intended for Rebecca's law firm, but I was the first to do it. 2 months down the road, after imbibing the wine she had given me, I passed out in my apartment during a networking event. A knot formed in my chest. You contacted law enforcement." With a nod, she agreed. I was lacking evidence, though, just vague ideas. The studies were unable to determine the chemical, although they did reveal increased toxicity. All of it was rejected by Rebecca. Oh, and the deal, that one just vanished. Lauren hesitated. My career was never the same after that. People started to talk about how unstable I was. Consumers retreated. After 6 months, I decided to leave the industry. I felt a parched throat. Everyone was involved, not only me. Over the years, Rebecca had perfected this technique. Subtly and with care, she eliminated any challengers to her authority. We finally had a pattern, all because of Lauren. Prior reports were revisited by Harper. An affidavit was filed by Lauren. Additional murmurs emerged. Those 2 individuals were interns before. 1 junior exec, females alone. Everything was a success. Everyone became sick after coincidentally running into Rebecca. The feud had shifted from a business competition. A trend of systematic destabilization was at work. At least this time we had proof. To testify was an agreement I reached with the prosecution. Lauren did as well. Ava also did. Trio further witnesses testified prior to the commencement of the trial. A napkin that matched the chemicals in Daniel's drawer was preserved by one of the attendees at the meeting given to her by Rebecca. I was surprised by how quickly everything fell into place. News outlets learned about it. "Corporate queenpin turns toxic" was the headline that was used. Headlines weren't the point here, though. We were talking about fairness here, as well as a caution to all the women who had ever heard the words "too ambitious," "too intense," or "too successful." For the eve of my trial, I stood in front of the reflection in the mirror. Remove all cosmetics, low light levels, nobody else except me. And I felt secure again after months of not feeling that way. No, it wasn't because the threat had ended, but that was because I had overcome my fear of confrontation. A chill pervaded the courtroom. I don't mean physically, but in that tight, quiet manner when you feel like your breath is pounding more than it should. Reporters, business attorneys, and those who had formerly regarded Rebecca as a mentor were crammed into the rooms. They now gave her the impression that she wasn't familiar to them. She maintained her impeccable stance as she sat at the defense table with her shoulders straight and her hair pinched high. She was tricked by her own sight. As the prosecution presented each evidence, they scurried restlessly, becoming smaller and smaller. Seated next to her, Daniel's hands quivered and his suit creased. His previously planned serenity had dissipated, replaced by the anxious tapping of his fingers. It was on day 2 that I decided to stand. I maintained my composure. My first illness was something I recounted to the court, regarding the gradual pattern that developed, regarding the coincidences that were everything but. I went into detail about the texts, the insincere care, the perfectly made-up grins, the complimentary tea and coffee. The recordings were played, every word, for each confession. There could be no ambiguity. The next witness was Ava, who described the unethical theft, illegal transportation, and weaponization of chemicals from a safe facility. Lauren came after her, even when her voice cracked once she continued speaking. The audience was unable to turn away as she recounted her experiences. The jurors seemed to be burdened by the gravity of her testimony. The courtroom underwent a transformation at the week's conclusion. No longer was the fallen marketing queen met with the same level of sympathy. There was now nothing but contempt. The prosecution's final argument was really well crafted. These were deliberate actions. This was organized. Our aim was here, and the risk was acknowledged beforehand. A month-long chemical sabotage campaign was planned by Daniel Carter and Rebecca Hart with one goal in mind: domination. In order to clear a path. In order to neutralize an emerging danger. Looking at the jurors gave me a good idea of how they were feeling. The atmosphere seemed to carry it. The ruling was unanimous when it was announced. I am guilty. Attempt to kill. There is a plot to murder someone. Prohibited drug theft. Editing patient records. The entire courtroom resounded with the judge's words. The most severe penalty conceivable is required in light of the premeditated character of this assault, the long-term abuse, and the breach of trust within the family. Daniel received an 18-year prison term. 47 Rebecca. Rest assured she remained composed, remained silent, perched motionlessly as if the truth had broken through the barriers she had built her entire life. She did nothing. In silence, Daniel sobbed. He didn't evoke any sympathy from me. They were both escorted away while handcuffed. People who had been a part of my life, before at my table on vacation and in my plans for the future, became prisoners in an instant. The sunbeams greeted me as I emerged from the courthouse. Something was odd. Cooler, yes, but also lighter. It was as if I had abandoned a burden I would never have to bear again in that courtroom. In the afternoon, I returned home and erased the backups, each and every file, with each and every recording. No diary entry is ever. It wasn't that I wished to disregard it. Nonetheless, the evidence was superfluous after all. Everyone was informed. Above everything else, though, it seemed obvious to me. At the Charlotte Women in Business Conference a year later, I found myself positioned behind a modern podium, staring down a sea of energetic young women. Keynote speaking duties fell on me. I couldn't help but notice the irony. What Rebecca had sought to rob us of was this very moment. The attention, the influence, and the client accounts. However, she failed to grasp the fact that none of those items possessed the true power. They were fighting for their lives. My words came from a place deeper than my notes or rehearsals had taken me as I gazed out at the audience and took a deep inhale. Achieving success goes beyond the number of business closed or clients acquired. Honesty is key. Resilience is the key. The key is to pay attention to your inner voice, no matter how loud the outside world says you should disregard it. For the moment it landed, I waited. I used to believe that being silent demonstrated my strength, that being polite would keep me safe. On occasion, though, it's not strangers that pose the most threat. It originates from those who profess to love you, while secretly working to break you down. Instantly, the room froze. However, the reality is, this I went on to explain. Preserving your tranquility does not make you insane. Pattern recognition does not require a theatrical flair. Plus, prioritizing your own needs over those of another else is always the right choice. An elderly lady in the first row dabbed at her face. Something else was scrawled furiously onto a notepad. A grin spread over my face. That evening, upon entering my apartment, I set my suitcase on the kitchen counter, poured a glass of wine for myself, and sat down to relax. Stay calm. Seal must not be examined. The terror does not leave any aftertaste, only tranquility and purpose. Their 3-year contract had been renewed by the Henderson business. Further customers came after. Fresh chances presented themselves. I was working on a larger project, one that would be founded on honesty and openness. I still haven't forgiven Rebecca. Daniel, maybe. I was not tasked with doing that. They have to deal with that. However, I did not bring them along anymore. Something more important than any campaign or pitch could have taught me had been imparted to me. That your gut feelings are priceless. That your voice has the power to both protect and harm. And that on occasion, when society endeavors to diminish your brilliance, your ultimate vengeance still radiates light.